can't separate the magic from the misery. It's the same mechanism.
Half of America is either on one of these things, maybe they're thinking about taking them, or they know somebody who's taking them. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound. We are talking about weight loss nonstop. But today we're also talking about what nobody else is talking about. What these medicines do to your gut. People are getting nauseous. They are getting constipated. They are getting bloated. And some are scared they even may be doing permanent damage to their intestines. So really, is the gut the missing half of this conversation, Dr. B?
I mean, I wouldn't say that it's the missing half, Chuck. I would actually say this is the story, right? This is the way that these drugs work, by acting on your gut. And these side effects that we hear whispers about, because some people, they're not really able to tolerate these drugs. Well, those aren't really side effects. That's actually the way that these medicines work. So today, I'm not here to scare you off. I'm also not here to sell you. I'm here to tell you what you need to know and what you can actually do about it.
We're not whispering today. We're going to be shouting the truth here on the Gut Insider. So let's dive into it. I want to begin today, Dr. B, with a rapid fire, the gut check, if you will. Let's start with some quick, simple questions about GLP-1s. Number one, true or false, my friend? The gut side effects are, as you just said, they're a bug and not a feature.
They are actually a feature, Chuck.
And name one thing that these do that has nothing to do with weight loss.
They improve liver fat.
And roughly what percentage of patients on these GLP-1s actually get unwanted gut symptoms?
At a minimum, about half. In many of the studies, actually more than that.
Gut check number 4, Ozempic and your microbiome, helping or hurting?
Too early to definitively say, but the early signals are positive. Seems to be helping.
Final question. Nobody's really talking about this one either. Stopping the drug, does that then get your gut back to normal?
It should, but it may take a little bit of time.
All right. That's your gut check. But I want to start my portion of the conversation here. And I want to take you back to 2009, Dr. B. That is when I was at my heaviest, 420 pounds, didn't think I was going to live to see 30 years old, and made the decision to undergo weight loss surgery. And I was very concerned about what the long-term data on this gastric bypass, the Roux-en-Y weight loss surgery, what the long-term statistics were for these patients. But the problem was, no matter how much I asked this of my surgeon, they weren't really able to give me hardcore data, basically because that data didn't exist yet, or they maybe, I don't know, were uneasy with the answers. I'm not really sure to this day what the truth was, but I did find it frustrating that when I asked, what does the statistics say long-term, years from now, what are the success rates? What kind of weight are the people carrying at that point? Couldn't get those answers. But luckily, in this case with the GLP-1s, it seems these patients, Dr. B, may not necessarily have to have those same concerns because we have a ton of data already.
That's interesting, Chuck, that you feel that way, because in a way, I'm thinking about, what year was your weight loss surgery? You have to remind me.
2009. So
Okay.
It will be 17 years this September.
It was right around then that we started to get long-term data. There was a 10-year study with bariatric surgery that came out around then that did provide us with some insights into sort of what happens. So perhaps it hadn't yet been published, but with this new class of drugs, I actually feel a little bit differently, to be honest with you. I hope you don't mind.
No, I hope that you do. I hope that medicine has evolved to the point where we do have this data. The other thing to keep in mind is, like, when I was getting this done, it was, I feel like, almost at the height of the weight loss surgery, craze. And I also think that even the long-term studies that you're referencing, I mean, that procedure evolved so quickly that the data that you get from 10 years ago may be a completely different type of procedure than the one that you're undergoing. For example, mine was open initially, whereas now they're all done laparoscopically virtually. So, lots of variables there, lots of changes. I would think that with a pill or an injectable in this case, you're not going to get, a constant evolution like you would with a procedure where they're able to continually fine tune it.
Yeah, that's true. One of my things as a medical doctor, as a gastroenterologist, is that I prefer to explore medical options first before moving towards surgical options, just because once you do the surgery, you can't undo the surgery,
Right.
right? So it is what it is, and you have to deal with the results that came from that. Whereas one of the advantages of medical therapy is, look, if it's not a fit, then you discontinue the medical therapy and you move in a different direction. That's it's nice to have that option on the table, right? So, and what I'll say with these medications, just to frame this, is that the the early results, right? We have studies that are like short periods of time, 1 year, possibly slightly more than a year, but there's not many of those these days. We can already see a signal of some of the benefits.
Yeah.
And that to me is a beautiful and exciting thing. I'm glad that these drugs exist for people who need them, because there are definitely people who need these drugs. And we'll come around to, some of the adverse effects that can happen with these medicines. I think that my greatest apprehension with these medicines is that you're sort of renting the benefits, right? Because you got to keep paying rent every month. And if you
Yeah.
and if you stop paying rent, then the benefits are no longer yours. The data are pretty clear that about a year after um, stopping these medicines, that the vast majority of people, they bounce right back to where they were before on all levels, in terms of in terms of weight, in terms of metabolic disease, and in terms of risk. So
That's the thing, though. If you'll allow me to jump in, it's like people go on these medications, but they never, train themselves or make modifications for what's going to keep them successful long term. And I'm sure that that's something that we're going to talk about later on as well. But I would love to, in the interest of fairness, if you'll allow me to ask you a little bit more about what these medicines actually do well, because there is an abundant amount of data that shows that these things actually, for the people who need them, they can be a total game changer.
yeah, they can. And what is exciting is that these papers seem to be coming fast and furious. So we're having new discovery. It seems like almost every month there's a new paper about some of the benefits. Now, to frame our conversation here, I think it's really important to understand that really what we're talking about is obesity medicine. So these studies are done on people who are obese at baseline, and that means a body mass index greater than 30. And in some cases, in many cases, these studies are done on people with morbid obesity with a body mass index greater than 35, right? So that's a standard that's different than someone who's slightly overweight. That's not the same. These are people who are at high risk and they have complications as a result of their obesity. And we know, Chuck, that obesity is associated with so many different health conditions, right? So in theory, if you correct the obesity, you should reduce your risk of those health conditions. Well, that's exactly what we see. So number one, these drugs are effective. If you take a look, the range of like how much weight loss people achieve, depending on which one we're talking about, is somewhere between 15% of their weight and 30% of their weight.
Is
Right.
that
So
excess weight or total body weight?
total body weight.
Nice.
Yeah. Total body weight. So if you imagine for a moment that a person weighs 300 pounds, if we are taking 15%, then that means we're removing 45 pounds. If we're taking 30%, then we're removing 90 pounds. These are substantial weight losses.
Huge.
And, so to me, that's a beautiful thing. And a lot of the benefits that I'm about to describe, it's very, very hard to disentangle, what happens when you take a person with, particularly morbid obesity, and you correct this to bring this into, um, perhaps not a body mass index less than 25, but in many cases, they're able to achieve a body mass index less than 30, which means they're not even considered obese anymore.
Wow. Wow. That's
So
huge.
here's what happens. Number one, massive benefits when it comes to cardiovascular disease. So it seems that there's about 20% less heart attacks, strokes, and cardiovascular death. All right. Number two, the kidneys get healthier. They seem to have about 24% less major kidney events. These are, again, both of these things are can get dragged down when we're metabolically out of balance, which is what obesity is. So, but then there's these other side conversations that are really interesting. For example, new research that just came out indicating that people have less sleep apnea. New research that just came out that said that people have improvements of their osteoarthritis. And then the one that I find particularly interesting is that we have an epidemic of what we used to call non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which means fatty liver. We have an epidemic of this. And what we're seeing in these studies is like not just a reduction of liver fat, we're seeing a resolution of liver fat. Resolution, meaning you can't even detect it anymore. And on top of that, that the liver is becoming less hard, which is what you see in cirrhosis, and softer, squishier like a sponge, which is a sign of a healthy liver. So you're not just reducing the liver fat, you're actually taking people and you're sort of taking them away from the cliff where they're about to have cirrhosis and the consequences of that.
So it's actually able to essentially regenerate itself back to a healthy state. That's pretty interesting. I didn't realize that that was fully possible in terms of like it just becoming more spongy as you were putting it. I think that's really interesting. I assumed that the fat would kind of dissolve or burn off in time, but I didn't realize that it would return to its normal squishy healthier state. That's really amazing to me. And somebody simply said one time that the body wants to be healthy. I think that it's really easy for us to forget how badly the body wants to be healthy and its natural abilities to kind of regenerate and to heal itself in situations like this. It's remarkable to me, man.
A quick comment that the liver to me is fascinating because it is the most resilient and regenerative organ that we have.
Yeah.
And to the point that you can literally go and take a healthy person and remove half of their liver and donate it to someone else. Right. And then they're okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I think what we're seeing here is, let me be transparent and clear. There's going to be some scar tissue that scar tissue is scar tissue. Like your scars don't disappear.
Right.
Right. But when you take away the inflammation, then it softens the liver. And that is also improving liver function. So yes, this is a beautiful story.
So let me ask you this. Since I've lost all of this weight and I've been scanned top to bottom the last 3 years, I was told by one doctor I have fatty liver from when I was still overweight. I was told by another doctor that my liver looks fine. And so to hear you say that perhaps, there is some remaining scar tissue, some residual scar tissue, I'm wondering perhaps if on that first scan back 3 years ago, that might be what the doctor was seeing. This was a doctor who I was unfamiliar with. It was essentially an ER kind of a doctor, not to discount them, but not somebody that would be intimately familiar with, in this case, my patient history. But I would assume that, perhaps that scarring would remain for anybody that was super morbidly obese.
Yeah. So I guess the way that I would answer this is that when we're looking at liver fat itself, there's non-invasive ways for us to look for liver fat. One is a basic ultrasound. That's sort of a classic test. Or if you want to get more detailed, you can actually do an MRI.
Mm.
The gold standard test, though, generally speaking, is going to be a liver biopsy. And that, of course, is an invasive test. So we try to avoid having to do that.
Yeah.
So it most likely that was a scenario where perhaps they didn't see it on an ultrasound, or they did see it on ultrasound, or it's just hard to get into the details without like, or to know without really digging into the details of what was done, where was it done, this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but scar tissue doesn't show up necessarily on it doesn't show up so easily on these imaging tests as the way that a liver fat does. So, there are other tests that we would do to try to assess that.
Yeah. But bottom line here, I mean, these drugs, again, as you say, I mean, there just seems to be more and more data coming out showing the upside to these things. So I do think that we kind of, deserve a little bit of credit just to kind of toot our own horn for, kind of presenting the balanced approach today.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the way that it should be done, and the way that these medications work is kind of interesting. Like to me, this is a gut story,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So GLP-1 is a hormone that it's literally a gut hormone released by these cells inside of your intestines and your colon. That really, this is the signal that your body says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" Like it's time to end our meal here,
Hmm.
right? So that's the way that we're naturally designed, is that when you've consumed enough, assuming that you're not scarfing down Taco Bell, Chuck, you know what I'm talking about,
Oh, yes, I do, sir. Very well.
right? Where like the pace of eating outpaces your body's ability to actually send you the signal, right? But if we slow down our meal and we allow our natural hormones to kick in, what ends up happening is that your body will release GLP-1, and the GLP-1 will slow down your stomach, and that makes you feel full, and it'll slow down your intestines, and it'll also talk to the pancreas and basically say to the pancreas, "Hey, like go ahead and release some insulin if there's any blood sugar that we need to control." So this is the way that it normally works. And by the way, there is a gut microbiome story there, because these gut microbes produce short chain fatty acids that can help to stimulate the release of GLP-1. This is why fiber is so satiating.
Mm.
It's not just because it fills our stomach, it's because fiber stimulates the release of this gut hormone that sends a signal to our entire body to say, well, we're good. I'm full. That's enough. But GLP-1 in its natural state, it only exists in the blood for a short period of time, and then it gets cleared out by another hormone. And so what they invented were these drugs that sort of bypass the clearing out process, where you could, basically inject, or now there's oral options, but you could take this medication and raise the blood levels of GLP-1 to unnatural levels, much far beyond what you would ever do, be able to do with your own natural physiology. And the GLP-1 doesn't get cleared out so quickly, so then it stays in your blood for a week. And so then during that period of time, we're continuously activating this pathway, which means that we're continuously slowing down stomach motility, and we're continuously slowing down the colon as well. So this is what ends up happening is that it can sort of set you up for the GI side effects.
Yeah, you and I have talked a lot about what slow transit time in the colon can do for a person, and it just seems to me like we were talking initially about all the good that these GLP-1 drugs have, but now this is kind of like the other side of the equation. This is the balanced side of it, and it just seems like the good and the bad are kind of coming from the same lever here, to use that analogy that you really like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's important to understand, is that this is not like this. It's appropriate to call it a side effect, but it's not even really a side effect. Like this is literally just the product of what we're doing to your intestines,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Is that we're slowing down your stomach, we're slowing down your colon, we're changing the way that the entire system works on some level, and as a result of that, you lose your appetite. You're no longer um, hungry and in pursuit of food the way that you normally would be. But on the flip side, nausea and bloating and constipation, and even in some cases diarrhea, they can really start to show up. And it's these gut symptoms, they're very common.
There was a quote in the New England Journal of Medicine. Maybe it was the title of the piece that really stood out to me. And I know that you saw it as well, that I think really summarizes exactly what it is we're trying to say pretty concisely. Do you have that review pulled up here? I think it was from this year, as a matter of fact. It was a 2026 review. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah. This is a brand new, the New England Journal of Medicine is like basically the most trusted and respected journal. It's where a lot of the major drug studies get published. And when they do a review article, they do a great job of breaking it down and keeping it balanced and honest. And here's what they said. They said, literally, this is a direct quote: "You can't separate the magic from the misery. It's the same mechanism."
Mm. I get it. And it's funny the way that you frame it. Like, it's not a side effect. It's the way the medication is designed to work. And it kind of makes me wonder if there's a gentler way to do it. I don't know. It's like right now you have the drug, which is a great seatbelt, and you're definitely going to want it in case you're in an accident. But that same life-saving seatbelt is going to leave a hell of a bruise if you're not careful. So how cranky are we talking here when it comes to the guts? Like, does this happen to everyone who takes these drugs, that they feel absolutely miserable, or is it just kind of an unlucky few?
I mean, it's certainly not an unlucky few. So the data are pretty clear. And again, like, because the drugs actually work this way, pretty much everyone is in a position of vulnerability when it comes to these kinds of symptoms that we're about to describe. But the research, when they've done a systematic review, taken a look at all the major randomized controlled trials of all the different forms of these medications, they find that it's about, at a minimum, about 50% of people that are having trouble, like sufficient trouble that they report it, not like a little bit of mild stuff. I think a little bit of mild stuff is 100%.
Mm.
So this is actually like beyond mild. And people are going, yeah, this is a problem. It's like really causing trouble for me. I don't feel well. And that's at a minimum about 50%, but like there's even some estimates that get substantially higher. Like there was one study where it was 84% of people in the highest dose arms that were experiencing these GI symptoms. And so if you think about 84%, that's like basically 5 in 6 people.
Wow.
It's a high number.
Yeah.
Right. It's only 1 in 6 people who gets off the hook without like reporting that they don't feel like trash. So it's going to come. It's going to happen. It's actually quite predictable. It's worse with higher doses, and it's worse in the first 8 weeks. And then generally your body starts to adapt and adjust. So if we can work through that, and we can, Chuck, in a moment here, we can start to dig into strategies that I recommend in terms of how to address these specific things, then, you can get like those benefits. Let me say this. Those benefits are phenomenal.
Mm.
And for people who are obese and morbidly obese, 100%, we should be thinking about, does this make sense? Flip side. Those studies were not done in people who were trying to lose an extra 20 pounds because they want to look good in a swimsuit.
It's not vanity weight.
Right. It's not vanity weight. So, and it's not healthy people who have money to try to look good by microdosing these medications. That's not the same. So don't take those benefits and say, oh, this is my justification for taking this medication because I want to like microdose it and try to look good. That's not what the study showed at all.
Let me ask you this. Are the side effects really the same no matter what medication we're talking about? I mean, because we've got the big four that we're focused on here today. So is it the same for Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and Zepbound, or does it differ from medication to medication?
So it differs a little bit from medication to medication, just in the same way that like the weight loss effects are different from medication to medication. So for example, when we talk about the weight loss, 15% was semaglutide, which is like, you could either call it Ozempic or Wegovy, depending on your indication.
Yeah.
So that's that. And that medication is a GLP-1 agonist, which basically means that it's stimulating the GLP-1 receptor. They have a second one, which is a combination of 2 hormones. GLP-1 and GIP. And then there's the newest one, which it's called retatrutide, and it stimulates 3 receptors. So it is GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. And so it's interesting because each of these hormones has slightly different effects on the body. And this last one, it's like a complex consideration for people, because this is the one that achieved up to potentially 30% weight loss, right? The retatrutide. You're going to be hearing about this a lot. People are going to be hearing about this a lot. It's coming.
That's the next big one, huh?
It's the next big one, but we have to talk about like the glucagon. So what's happening here? Well, so glucagon actually, it goes in a totally different direction, where glucagon stimulates the release of energy, glycogen, from our liver and activates our metabolism, right? To basically protect blood sugar. So it protects us from our blood sugar dropping too low. It's sort of the counterpoint to insulin. So what you see in this particular drug that's kind of interesting is like profound weight loss, because what the glucagon does is it actually stimulates your metabolism. Okay. But there's a downside to that, which is that you simultaneously, like your baseline heart rate starts to go up, which is not something we necessarily want. And that there's other sort of effects that are the result of the stimulation, like it may affect your sleep, things like this. So the point is that each of these medications is distinct, and it's a conversation with your doctor about what is the right one for you. And I don't think there's a universal answer based upon the amount of weight loss. I think that it needs to be discussed.
All right, I want to take a minute and dive a little bit deeper into the microbiome question here. We've talked a lot about the mechanics. I feel like the microbiome in particular is probably why a lot of the Gut Insider audience is tuning in today. So let's dive into that here. What is the effect that these medications overall have on the microbiome here, Dr. B?
Well, there was a recent systematic review that took a look at this question. Now, here's what I need to say. We don't have good microbiome studies in humans yet. So the vast majority of what we know is from animal studies. And of course, animals are not the same as people.
Right.
So we have to be very careful. In the animals, the microbiome effects are worthy of me standing up and dancing a jig. Right? Like they're really beneficial. Like it's very clear to me that this is a change that's good for the microbiome, that like what we're seeing is the emergence of beneficial bacteria like Akkermansia and fecal bacterium. These are like sort of the pillars of a healthy gut. And we're also seeing more short chain fatty acid producing microbes. Okay, Chuck, here's the thing that you need to know. When people lose weight, the microbiome always looks healthier. So I don't think that it's the direct effect on the actual gut. I think it's instead that people are losing weight, and this is why we're seeing this. And again, that's in the animal models.
Right.
But then when you turn to human studies, because we're real people and we're out in the wild and we're doing whatever we're doing, you actually don't see these benefits necessarily showing up. So is it because we just can't study them well in humans? Is it because we don't have good enough studies? That is definitely possible. We don't have very good studies. We just have like small little studies so far. But it may also be that the weight loss, which is beneficial and good for the microbiome, is being counterbalanced against a diet that's not sufficiently supporting the microbiome, so you don't really get the full benefit. So this is the issue that we run into, is that so far the human studies are not really showing us that the microbiome is healthier, even though we're seeing this signal in an animal model. What's the deal with that? And what can we do to better support the gut? I think that's the question I would put on the table.
Now, I have no idea how the human studies have been modeled, but I do wonder about adherence. In that case, obviously with an animal study, It's going to be a lot easier to control. Humans, we have, good days and bad days when it comes to the stuff that we're eating, the way that we're feeling. A lot of people who are in these situations where they would be wanting to lose weight, probably struggling a little bit with emotional eating, binge eating, depending on how much weight they have to lose. There's a lot of variables there. And I do wonder, I know that this is something that researchers try to really account for, but I would think that with human studies and something like this, adherence would definitely be at least a little bit of a factor.
Yeah, and I assume you mean adherence to a healthy diet.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And this is a big part of the issue from my perspective, is that if you take a person who is obese or morbidly obese, the vast majority of those people, like I don't want to like totally generalize and paint with broad strokes, but the majority of those people, their diet is going to be most likely an unhealthy form of diet, right?
Yeah.
Like it's highly unlikely that they were consuming a optimized whole food plant-based diet or Mediterranean style diet,
Correct.
right? So then you take this diet, because the average American, we know what the average American is, let alone, the average person who's obese. The average American, their diet is 60% ultra processed foods, 30% animal products, 10% plant-based foods, with potatoes being the number one plant.
French fries, right?
French fries
Yeah.
and chips. And then they're deficient in fiber at baseline. And then what you do is you basically provide the medication, but you don't provide the guidance and support that they need to simultaneously make a diet change, which is really what they need,
Mm-hmm.
right? And without that diet change, you basically are just contracting what was an insufficient diet that was already leading to nutritional deficiencies before they ever went on the drug.
Yep.
And you're leaving them in a position of vulnerability, because you're going to really exacerbate that problem, make it even worse. So this is the problem that I see, is that it's, to me, malpractice to provide this medication without simultaneously providing the resources that are necessary to transform the diet and improve the quality of the diet.
I firmly believe in these types of medications. I firmly believe in weight loss surgery if you have tried and tried and tried and tried and tried again without success, to be, a weight loss success story long term yourself, right? And for millions of people, that feat seems next to impossible. These GLP-1 drugs can absolutely help jumpstart you there, but you are going to be shooting yourself in the foot if you don't make those diet and lifestyle changes that you've been trying to make without success as well. These things are used as a jumping off point, but without making those other changes, you are not going to be successful long term. I mean, even though I had weight loss surgery, the part of the story that doesn't get talked about by other people is the fact that I got out there and I was walking 5 miles a day initially, and I was eating a much healthier diet. I was doing all of the things that I had also been avoiding my entire life, in addition to having had the weight loss surgery. And so now here we are, 17 years later. And yeah, it hasn't exactly been a linear, smooth journey, but I will say, look, we're almost 2 decades in, and I'm still like way less than half the man I used to be. And that is your proof that without making those changes, no matter what route you go, whether it's a GLP-1, a surgery, or anything else, the odds of you being successful long-term are very, 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 very slim. So it's not a magic bullet. It can definitely help getting you going, but it's not going to get you to the finish line. That's my thought.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And like, to me, if you want to optimize and get the most out of these medications that you can possibly get, then to me, we need to lock in on what are the things that we can do to protect and nurture the gut microbiome. What are the things that we can do to protect and nurture our body through a nutrient dense diet that even at a reduction in calories, you're still able to maintain a healthful diet that supports all of your bodily needs. And the third thing, just to touch on this real quick, because we haven't gotten into it yet, is that when a person loses weight, they don't just lose fat, they also lose muscle mass. And these medications, what the pattern that we're seeing, the signal that we're seeing, Chuck, is that the way in which a person loses weight is very similar, whether you're on a GLP-1 drug or you're just in a calorie deficit on your own.
Mm.
That basically it's the calorie deficit that starts your body to go into this new mode of breaking down, right? Because it's basically trying to create energy sources from the inside. And so now you're breaking down fat, but you're also breaking down muscle. And
Yeah.
it's inevitably going to happen. There's no way to stop that. So I guess my point is we need to support the microbiome. We need to support your body in terms of nutrition. And we also need to support your muscle and your bones when you're going to be in this calorie deficit.
And that's like part that really scares people as well. Again, no matter what route they're going, but let's keep it specific to GLP-1s here. How significant of a problem is muscle and bone loss? Is this something that also you can repair in time? You were just saying it's inevitable that you're going to lose it, but can you build it back after the fact with GLP-1s?
Well, yeah, and you can also remodel as you go, right? You can do things that actually protect these tissues, the bones and the muscle. It's not a complex thing, Chuck. I would suggest that we start to jump into the things that we can do in order to mitigate the symptoms, protect our gut microbiome, and preserve bone and muscle as we're on these medications, so that basically people can get the most out of them.
Well, let's take a question from Julie, who was wondering about, whether or not this delayed emptying from the GLP-1s is going to be a permanent fixture for her, even after she goes off of these medications. How concerned should she be that she's always going to be dealing with this?
There's no research that I've seen so far that indicates that if you stop the medication, that it will linger in perpetuity. I have seen some people who stop the medication have an have severe symptoms, stop the medication, and those symptoms will linger for a period of time. And that's because their body doesn't just naturally settle itself down. So I'll give you a quick example,
Yeah.
Chuck.
Yeah.
There was a patient that I took care of recently who took retatrutide, so it's the new one, and just a single dose, and felt horribly unwell, and then started having diarrhea. And the story was that the diarrhea was during the day, never at night, worse after meals, a lot of times like big waves of cramps with the meals that were severe. Bloating, and the belly would look like almost like this person was pregnant, especially as the day went on. That would get worse and worse as the day goes on, and then it flattens out overnight. The concern was like the side effect of diarrhea from the medication. But actually the issue here, what actually happened was this was severe constipation. And so they got backed up to the point that liquid was sneaking through the cracks and the crevices, giving them diarrhea. But the bloating, the waves of cramps, the distended belly, all of these things were classic for constipation. So we flushed out the system and did a reset on the gut, and all the symptoms went away instantly.
You flushed out the system, did a reset on the gut. Like, were they still taking the medication at that point? Or when you say like you flushed out the system, they discontinued the medication?
No, what I'm saying is I think they took literally one dose.
Oh, literally, like that's it. One dose, and it had that significant of an impact?
Because I think that the issue, Chuck, yes, so it was one dose, and I think that the issue was that they flipped into this severe constipation with overflow diarrhea,
Yeah.
and the person didn't know that this was constipation. Like, understandably so, they're experiencing diarrhea,
Wait a
right?
minute. We may have a separate show here. You can be constipated and have diarrhea. Those two things seem like they should not be mixing or interchanging.
100%. You can have constipation, have diarrhea. There's a number of ways that this can happen. But what I'm telling you right now is that for this person, their gut shut down, right? You take one dose, the dose does linger in your system it's not just like a 1-day thing, right? We're talking about this lingering in your system for a period of time. So, but then the colon shuts down, locks up, and now you have this column of hard stool that's stuck. And the problem is that the medication wears off, but the constipation lingers. And so, because it's a severe column of hard stool. So this person, the only way to get back on track was actually to basically like reset the gut and clear this stool out. And then the body gets back into a rhythm again. But this is why it lingered. It's not that the medication was still causing this effect 3 months later. It's that the medication caused this effect, and then the body wasn't able to resolve the effect on its own.
I don't know why my mind is blown right now, but it absolutely is, and we will devote a show to this. I wanted to understand the mechanics more behind this. It's just friggin' mind blowing to me. But I also am cognizant of the fact that we have a vast audience, my friend. So let's talk to the people who may not necessarily be having that particular symptom set, but still want to optimize their microbiome, make their own symptoms a little bit more tolerable as they're continuing with these medications. If you're putting together a playbook, right? Put on your coach hat. Put together a playbook for somebody who's on these things right now. What would your playbook look like, Dr. B?
All right, I've been thinking about this a lot, Chuck.
Yeah.
Because this is, to me, the missing piece that people desperately need. So I'm going to walk through, I think I have 6 things. And I'm going to walk through them one by one, and we're going to explain, and then you weigh in on your side, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay? All right, number 1. As you reduce your nutritional intake, you get down to low numbers of calories. You might be on 1,000 calories, 1,200 calories, in some cases 800 calories. It's crazy. All right. You need to make sure that you have sufficient protein. So this is one of the challenges that exists, because the protein supports your muscle. And if you don't have sufficient protein, your muscle breaks down. So the target is 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilo per day. And that's of lean body mass. All right. So generally speaking, if you shoot for 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal, you're probably in a solid spot.
Right on. 25 to that 25. How easy is that to do when you're eating? You eat a very plant forward diet, obviously, plant powered plus. How easy is that to do if you're still eating that plant-based diet?
I think that you're going to have to make accommodations, because if you're eating like a high volume salad, right, that is low in calories, that becomes very hard to do, to be honest with you, right? So whereas if you prioritize protein-rich sources, which is what I would advocate for, that's the way that you accomplish this. So you're prioritizing things like tofu, tempeh, beans, whole grains, nuts, seeds, things like this. That's, to me, like the way that you accomplish this. Is to focus on the plant-based sources of protein.
Yeah, the protein that's married to the fiber in those sources altogether, which I would be stunned if fiber wasn't one of your 6 plays in your playbook also.
Well, you just called me out on it, so of course it has to be in there. I just didn't want to do it first. I felt like that would be too obvious if I do that number 1. So, but with that in mind, all those plant-based sources of protein that I just mentioned, guess what else they're a source of? Fiber.
Mm-hmm.
And I said earlier in the show that part of the problem that we have is that you take, an American public where the fiber intake is deficient at baseline, and then you reduce their caloric intake. This is a setup for like wildly insufficient fiber intake. It was already wildly insufficient. It's going to get way worse. So we need fiber. It's going to support your gut microbiome. It's going to support gut motility. So to me, like trying to prioritize those plant-based protein sources is the way that we get both our protein and our fiber to support our muscle mass and simultaneously support our gut muscle.
All right, the team's back in the huddle, waiting on play call number 3. 3rd down, coach. What you got?
All right, so number 3 is to actually take a walk after meals. So you actually talked about this a little bit, like that you were walking 5 miles a day or something like this. I don't know that you have to do 5 miles a day, but what I do know is this: a short walk, like literally 10 minutes, 15 minutes after a meal, It helps to keep you metabolically balanced. It helps you to control your blood sugar. It supports your gut motility, including your stomach, and it eases GI symptoms. So this is a powerful tool that any of us, any of you out there who you eat and then you don't feel so great, you feel excessively full, you feel bloated, however it might be, taking a walk is the way to manage that. I strongly encourage it.
That's no joke. Also, speaking from experience to this day, when I'm feeling bloated, if I get up and I go for a walk after a meal, it helps. And I'm not going to say it like goes from, 100% symptom down to zero, but you can knock a good 50% off. Why? Because you're walking, things are moving around. You were just talking about the motility benefits there. I mean, we've talked about fart walks here on the show. Sometimes you're moving around, you just let it fly and you feel so much better. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be complicated.
100%. It's a great time to rip a fart is when you're on a walk and no one's around and you can blame it on the dog,
Yeah,
So
man, I feel good about that. Like, because then I come home and I drop the dirty clothes into the hamper and I'm like, hey, my wife has to wash the skivvies anyway, so I don't even have to deal with it. It's a beautiful thing. Take your fart walk. Feel good about life.
the benefits of walking are far beyond what most people realize too. So within my private community, the Gut Health Collective, we just got done doing an entire month where the challenge was to get your steps. And a quick summary of what I found in researching this topic, which I really had not dug deep enough into this until I did this challenge, is that if you can get yourself up to 4,000 steps per day, there already is massive, massive benefits in terms of your health. 4,000 steps. Most of us are probably around 2,000 or 2,500 without even trying. So literally we're talking about just like a short little extra amount of time, probably a 30-minute walk gets that done. If you go from 4,000 up to 7,000, the steps are incrementally, the benefits are incrementally increasing the entire way. And it's massive, massive benefits. So it is a big beneficial change from 4,000 up to 7,000. And 7,000 appears to be the sweet spot. We always hear 10,000. 10,000 was never grounded in the data. What's grounded in the data is that if you can get to 7,000 steps, you are receiving most of the benefits at the optimal spot. Because when you go beyond 7,000, more is better, but it's diminishing returns. You got most of your benefit already when you hit 7,000.
We know about the benefits, cardiovascularly speaking, of walking. We know about even strengthening the immune system. But is there any data that shows specifically with the GI tract that there is greater benefit from those 4,000 to 7,000 steps? Those studies that you've seen, is there any literature there?
Well, there was a recent study that came out that showed an association between physical activity. They actually had everyone was wearing the same tool to measure their steps and their physical activity. And what they showed in this study through multiple different measures that were all pointing in the same direction is that the more active that you are, the less likely you are to be diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. Now, a caveat with that study is that it was an association, so it doesn't necessarily prove that steps protect you from IBS, and certainly people who don't feel well, they're less likely to go and get steps. But what we also have is other data that you and I are discussing right now that indicate that when people walk more, it's good for the microbiome, it's good for their gut motility, gets their body into a rhythm. So there's all these benefits. I think that there's definitely some truth to that study.
All right, we're halfway home with the playbook. Give us play number 4, sir.
All right, number 4. So we just talked about walking, and now I'm going to talk about a different form of physical activity, which is resistance training, right? Where you're actually doing strength training. And what this does is it activates the muscle, but it also puts tension on the bone. So by doing these types of exercises, this is how we protect the bone, how we protect the muscle, right? As we're simultaneously losing weight and in a calorie deficit, this is how we actually fulfill those things. And it also deserves to be said that resistance training has been associated with beneficial changes to the gut microbiome.
All right, what do you have in slot number 5, my friend? We're beyond the realm of football here. We're into 5th down territory.
Yeah, the analogy kind of fell apart, but that's okay. We're going to keep going. May seem totally obvious, but I think it needs to be said directly, and everyone needs to hear this because it's something for you to discuss with your doctor. When you add these medications, when you adjust these medications, you make small changes over time. And if you do that, if you're patient about it, as opposed to rushing into it and going all in all at once, by slowly increasing over time, you're allowing your body to adjust to the medication. Most of the adverse effects that people feel, these symptoms, they happen in the first 8 weeks. So if you can just allow your body to settle in, you're more likely to be successful with the medication.
All right. And, there's also a lot of talk about supplements. And I think that that's, spoiler alert, going to be part of the conversation for number 6 in your playbook. Let's expand on that, if you would bring us home there.
Yeah. So, okay, these things that I've been talking about, let's run back through them. Protein, good for muscle. Fiber, good for your gut microbiome. Walking after meals, good for your gut microbiome, good for your motility. Resistance training, good for your muscle, good for your gut microbiome. Slow adjustments, that's just good medicine. But what we come back to is that the entire point of this conversation was that we have a very large percentage of people, again, at least half of people, but in some cases, far beyond half, 5 out of 6 people, where they're experiencing these symptoms that are so problematic that they might quit this medicine that could be really good for them. Nausea, bloating, constipation, right? And we've discussed how the gut microbiome, it needs to be protected through all this. So what we could do is we could tease it apart, Chuck, right? And have one thing that we do for every single one of these things. So if I were to target nausea, I would use ginger. Ginger is extremely effective for nausea and also helps with sort of the upper gut motility, keeping things in a rhythm. All right. If I were to target constipation, if it were a supplement, my ideal choice would be magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide gently draws water into the intestines. It keeps the stool soft and helps to keep things moving through. It's not perfect, but it's great. And then the last thing is the microbiome. We've talked about fiber, but obviously there's other supplements that we can use to address the microbiome. It could be a fiber supplement like 38 Terra DMN, Daily Microbiome Nutrition, or it could be something like a probiotic that you use. All right, but what we did at 38 Terra, because I am the person who formulates all of our supplements, is we created something that addresses the whole process. And so it's called RCE because it really was developed for constipation. Regularity and constipation ease. That's what RCE stands for. But for people that are on GLP-1 medications, this is perfectly formulated for you. Because what it contains is, number 1, Ginfort, which is a ginger concentrate. It contains a very, very, very disproportionately high concentration of the gingerols, which are the things that address the nausea. Where 100 milligrams of Ginfort would be the equivalent of taking somewhere between 1,000 milligrams or 2,000 milligrams of ginger powder. So it's highly effective for helping people to sort of improve that queasiness, that nausea, and getting their gut into a good rhythm. This RCE also contains the magnesium oxide in the evidence-based dose that allows you to take exactly what you need to keep your gut into rhythm, to keep your stool soft, and keep things moving through. And then the third ingredient, these are, by the way, like to me, these are all hero ingredients. They're all superstars. They're all evidence-based. They're all being delivered at the evidence-based dose. The third ingredient is a next-generation postbiotic called Plenibiotic. And Plenibiotic is actually a heat-killed probiotic that has been shown to reshape the microbiome, to increase the production of short-chain fatty acids, which of course we know are beneficial to our gut, that we desperately want those. And what's interesting is there's some preclinical data that suggests that it also increases gut serotonin. And gut serotonin is what helps us to maintain our rhythm. And they actually studied Plenibiotic in a group of people on GLP-1s. And they found that it was extremely helpful in terms of easing the symptoms that are associated with the use of their medication, allowing them to continue on that medicine, allowing them to tolerate it. So what's interesting is that I formulated this product, RCE, to like really target different phases of constipation. Like to me, constipation is not so simple as this thing that we just want to overpower the gut. To me, constipation is like a nuanced, complex topic that includes our gut motility, includes the softness of the stool, includes our microbiome. RCE was formulated to basically address all three of those things. But then what emerged as these GLP-1 drugs really came into public consciousness is it became very clear to me, we actually have here in RCE the perfect supplement for people who are experiencing these symptoms, nausea, constipation, and they want to support their gut microbiome. This is designed to do that.
Yeah, that's really fascinating to me that everything just kind of falls into place. Ding, ding, ding. So this is a new thing. Is it already available for purchase?
Yeah, it actually just came out recently. It's only here in the United States so far, and then we'll be expanding into other countries as time goes on. It's just sort of the process and complexity of having a company that does business internationally in this space.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the early returns are coming in, and like the stories that I'm hearing from people are so exciting. People who have struggled with these issues and seeing dramatic results. And it's a beautiful thing. It's like to me, what you do is you give it a shot, you see how it goes, and if it works, you win.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, then you move on.
What do you have to lose? Yeah. So I would hope like we can drop a link down below in the show description or pin a comment, something like that. That's pretty interesting. So there's that. I want to wrap things up though by asking you about something interesting that I heard, and I wish that we had more time. I feel like maybe we can even do a part 2 of this conversation, but I want to end with something that I thought was like really interesting, that some people are actually using these GLP-1 drugs kind of backwards. And you're like, what the heck does that even mean? And I'm not even 100% sure that I understand what it means to use a drug backwards, but I know that you do. So take us home looking from the back toward the front, if you will.
Yeah. Well, so what I've been hearing is some people who are suffering with diarrhea. And then what they're doing is they're saying, oh, well, I know that the GLP-1 is going to shut down that diarrhea. So let me go and take this, like microdose this medication to improve. It's not for weight loss, not for these other benefits. They're going to microdose it to try to shut down the diarrhea, is what some people are doing. I don't recommend it. Here's why. Number one, it's clearly an off-label use. This is not what these medications were designed for. Which would be fine if we were actually addressing the root of the problem. But the root of your problem in diarrhea is not a GLP-1 deficiency. There's zero evidence that would be true. So what I come to is, okay, why are you having diarrhea? And let's address the root of that. Because by putting you on this medication, number one, we could actually make your diarrhea worse, because these medications have been associated with diarrhea. Number two, if you don't need to lose weight, you're going to start losing weight. You're going to lose muscle mass. This may not be what you want. That may be an unintended side effect. And number three, I'm not convinced yet that this is the right way to approach getting a healthy gut. That I think that like we're in a much better position to exert control over these different tools that we have to improve our gut health when the GLP-1 is not in the picture.
Oh man. Those off-label rebels, man, those off-label rebels, and they're just using it for purposes of, I don't know. I've heard of like spas where they hand out these medications to people who clearly don't need them. They're just taking them for vanity reasons. It's hysterical. But like I said, I want to do a part 2, but I want to close with the gut recheck. I'm going to ask you the same 5 questions that we did at the top, just to kind of like reaffirm everything that we've learned today. So number 1, true or false, the gut side effects of these GLP-1 drugs are a bug and not a feature?
No, they're a feature because this is what your gut is. This is what they're doing is they're actually pumping the brakes on your stomach and your colon.
We've named a lot, but could you name for me one thing that they do that has nothing to do with weight loss?
Nothing to do with weight loss. Well, the liver fat was the one I mentioned before, but like there's also less sleep apnea, good for sleep, the kidneys, the heart, all great.
And roughly what percentage of people who take these medications, Dr. B, suffer from gut symptoms?
At least half, potentially as high as 84%.
Ozempic and your microbiome, sir, helping or hurting? What say you?
Can't say hurting, but also I want to go so far as to say helping yet. Animal models are not the same as human studies. I want more, but it is promising.
And you get done with the drug, you stop taking it. Does your gut revert to normal?
Yes, it does, but it takes time. And keep in mind that case study that I shared where you may have something that actually requires you to address the problem.
Absolutely. Hey, man, I feel like we have covered a lot of ground today. I love the fact that you've come up with RCE for people who are suffering. But yeah, we gotta wrap things up for the day, man.
From my perspective, my closeout is to say that if we're being balanced and we're being honest, there's a lot of good that can potentially come from these medicines, but we also need to be clear in understanding what they actually do. Because when we have that understanding, you can better take care of your body, take care of your gut. When you're actually taking these medicines, you can mitigate a lot of these symptoms that come with the medicine. Therefore, you can tolerate them better. And the end result is that you get the result that you were actually hoping for from the very beginning, which is for a lot of people to reduce the risk of disease, to lose weight, but simultaneously protecting your muscle, protecting your bones, protecting your gut.
These medications, to me, they are a tool. They are not a cure. You will hear your doctors tell you that these are used to be or are a tool. You say, well, what the heck does that even mean? It means like it's part of what will get this overall project of your health accomplished, but it's not everything, right? So maybe you need this hammer, which are the GLP-1s, but you're also going to need some nails and some screws and a screwdriver and a drill. So the hammer is just one part of it. There's a lot more that goes into it. And unfortunately, there are no shortcuts, but this is a great way to help you get going if you have tried everything and you feel like you are truly stuck. So you pair the GLP-1s with the RCE if you feel stuck, or if you feel like you can give it a go without the GLP-1s, that's great too. It's about finding out what works for you, Dr. B. I think that's kind of my big takeaway. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Finding
that's me too.
Patient.
Yeah, I don't want to be that doctor who sits there and totally attacks these things, and I also don't want to be the doctor who defends them, even when there's bad things happening. So to me, I just want to be balanced. It's always about benefits versus risks. For people who need them, I'm so happy they're here.
There it is. Dr. B has spoken, my friends. And if today's episode of The Gut Insiders has helped you, drop a comment. Somebody scrolling needs to know that they're not alone. That's the thing. It's like you feel rotten, you feel sick, and you always feel like you're the only person going through it. But with these GLP-1 drugs, believe me, guys, there is a community of millions who are going through the same thing. And also, if you raised that health IQ today, as I say elsewhere, be sure to leave a nice comment down below and subscribe here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you get your shows, right here on YouTube as well. Catch us literally, Dr. B. People can get the Gut Insiders wherever they are, man. That makes this a beautiful, beautiful thing, man. And I've enjoyed spending this time with you. It has also been beautiful, my friend.
Yes, thank you, Chuck, and thank you everyone for being here. And we'll see you next time on the Gut Insiders.